Welcome to Lab 1. So for this lab, you're going to need SPSS. If you have not downloaded SPSS yet, I encourage you to go to the top module of the home page where I think that module is titled Class Resources or Course Resources. And then within that module, there is a page titled SPSS. And when you go in there, there's a list of different ways that you can go about getting SPSS. So you'll need to make sure you have it downloaded first. And then once you download it, you're going to click on the icon that looks like this down here. And it will open. It's going to be a little white square at first. It takes a while to open. And when it does open, this is what you will see. And so you're going to need that set up there. And then you're also going to need within our course to find the laboratory assignment number 1, which is in the module with the discussion and the quiz. So you'll need to have that ready as well. So what we're going to do is use this assignment to help us learn SPSS, and then we're going to use SPSS to help us complete the assignment. So I'm just going to put this off to the side for a second, or actually, you know what, I'm going to minimize it. And here on the SPSS screen, I am going to close this first screen that popped up automatically. And that is going to leave me with the data editor screen, the SPSS data editor screen. And on the bottom, you'll notice that there are 2 tabs. There is the data view, which is the view that we're in now. This is where we'll be inputting all of our numbers, so all of our data. And then if you click on the tab to the right of that blue data view tab called variable view, you will see the variable view screen. And this is where you're going to list the variables and their names. So we're going to start on this screen for lab assignment 1. I'm just going to move it over to make room for my lab assignment worksheet. And so I am going to be using just the markup tool in Preview to edit my lab assignment worksheet here. But there's different ways to edit your lab assignment worksheet. So you can refer to the FAQ if you don't like doing it this way and you're interested in another way to input the scores here. Of course, you could also print this out and just write right on it because you are going to be entering this data into the lab assignment in SPSS, and that's where you'll be receiving credit for this. Okay, so SPSS application number 1 reads, a psychologist administered a self-esteem inventory to 22 students in a statistics class and obtained the following scores. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to label the variable. It has the following scores here, and it tells me to enter this self-esteem data in SPSS, name the variable, and give it a label. So this data goes with the self-esteem variable. So I'm going to write in here self-esteem. This is what happens if you put a space or any special characters in the cells. You'll get this error. So what you want to do is write the word with no spaces. Okay, so now that we've named our variable self-esteem, we are just going to look at a couple of these other columns here, like the decimals column. So for the decimals column, because our data doesn't have any digits after the decimal, it's just a whole number, we're going to take the column that says decimals where it says 2, and I'm going to lower that to 0. Alternatively, you could just put your cursor next to it, delete, and then hit 0 that way. And then for the label, I'm just going to label this SE so that it's easier to kind of work with that variable name when I'm looking at my data. So I don't have the long word self-esteem, I just have this abbreviated SE. Okay, so it looks like we have set up our variable here in the variable view page. So we're going to go to the data view page on next to the variable view button on the bottom. I'm going to click data view, and that's going to take me here to the data view page on the data editor. I'm just going to broaden that self-esteem variable a little bit. And I'm going to look on my SPSS application to find the values that I'm going to be typing into this column. So here's my data. Also worth noting is it says there's going to be 22, or that there were 22 students in this study where they got this data from. So I should have 22 numbers. N should equal 22. So I'm going to start putting all of these values in one at a time. So if I hit enter, it will take me down to the next cell. But when I get to the last cell, I'm going to want to stop and not press enter. Shouldn't be talking and trying to do this at the same time. I'm not that talented. So hopefully you're doing this with me. Just follow along on your own computer, or maybe if you don't have that much space on your screen, then you could just watch to this part, pause, and then do it yourself. Okay, so we have entered all the data, and I'm not going to press enter there, or it's going to take me down to the next cell. But I can already see that I did something wrong because I don't have 22 numbers in here. I only have 21. So let me see where I made the mistake. Okay, so this 23 I forgot to input here. So I've put it in, and then I had to just redo entering all these scores here. So I've done that, and I didn't hit enter on my last cell. And so what I'm going to do now is the rest of this assignment, or the next step of this assignment. So I need to create a frequency table and report the following. So the frequency of students scoring a 23 and the percentage of students who scored a 20. So for that, what I'm going to do is go back to my SPSS, and I'm going to click on Analyze, Descriptive Stats, Frequencies. So once you have those all highlighted, go ahead and click on it. And then what you're going to do is take the self-esteem variable, and you can either double click it and it will go over, or you can use the arrow here to move it over. But this tells the frequencies page here which variable you want to work with. And so we have our self-esteem variable, like if you had additional variables here. So we want to work with our self-esteem variable. So we're going to click on statistics, and then we are going to check mark all the measures of central tendency. And we're going to go ahead and check mark the measures of variance, or measures of variability, I'm sorry. And I think that should be good for now. And then we're going to go ahead and click continue. And we are going to click OK as well. I think we'll come back to that other stuff. Okay, so once you do that, then what's going to happen is you're going to have your SPSS output pop up. And so this is what you're going to need to save and submit to Canvas in the show work section of the lab. I think it's actually titled SPSS Output. But anyways, this is what we're talking about when we say SPSS Output. And so here we have a frequency table that breaks down, here we have our statistics that breaks down the measures of central tendency and then the standard deviation, variance, and range. And here is where we have our frequency distribution, just like what you made for your graphing homework. But they've added the percentages and stuff to theirs. So the frequency table is what we're going to need to complete our SPSS worksheet over here. All right, so the frequency of students scoring 23, I'm going to come over here to this frequency distribution. Here's the 23, and the frequency for that is 4. So I'm going to come over here. Oh, here we go. Okay, then I can take that text box, put it there, change that to 4. All right. And then the percentage of students who scored a 20, I'm going to come over here, and it says 13.6%. So okay, so 13.6. All right, and that's everything. So I'm just going to take this output and save it, first of all. And I am going to, oh, it's labeled output 1, so that will actually work for today because this is the output for lab number 1. If it was for, the lab number 2, we'd put output 2, so on and so forth. But I'm going to save mine to my desktop so it's easily accessible. Cool. Okay, and then I'm just going to minimize it. All right, so I need to create a histogram. So in order to create a histogram, I'm going to go to Analyze, Descriptives, Frequencies, and we already have the variable in there. So now I'm going to go to Charts, and I'm going to click Histograms, and I want to show the normal curve on the histogram so I can show a comparison of my data to a normal curve. So I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to click Continue and OK. And then my output pops back up and it has this histogram added to it. So this is the reason we don't want to minimize this is the reason we don't want to close out of our outputs. We want to leave them up the whole time that we're doing the lab so that everything we're doing just gets added to it. The output is like our report that we're going to be turning in. So here I can see the normal curve, and this blue histogram here is our data. And I'd say for the most part, the curve looks pretty normal. Our histogram takes the shape of a normal curve for the most part. So what we need to do next is get the histogram on our assignment here. And so to do that, I like to just take a screenshot. You can Google how to take a screenshot on whatever device that you're using. Just want to get the whole thing in there. And then when I do screenshots, they go to my desktop here. And so I don't know how to copy and paste and preview a picture. I can't figure it out. So what I'm going to do instead, just because I'm going to need this information later, so I just want to have it all compiled here onto this SPSS worksheet or the lab assignment 1. So what I'm going to do on preview is I am going to go to Edit, Insert, Page from File, and then I'm going to select my screenshot. And it's going to just appear on the next page, and that's fine with me for this assignment. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that sidebar by just going to View, Hide Sidebar. All right, so the next thing that we are going to want to make is a frequency polygon. So to make a frequency polygon, we're going to need to go back to the data editor. So I'm just going to save this, minimize it, not X out of it. And then in the data editor or SPSS, I'm going to go to Graphs and then Chart Builder. And so in here we click on Histogram, and then if we just put our cursor over the images, it will tell us what it is that the image represents. So we want to click on Frequency Polygon for this one, and we're going to drag it up there. And then what we are going to do is drag our self-esteem variable into the x-axis. So the data will go there because we want just a simple frequency count on the y-axis. And then we are going to click OK. And it should pop up on our output down here. And there it is. So there's our frequency polygon. And we can go ahead and screenshot that as well. And again, minimize, don't X out. I get my screenshot here, just popped up. And then I'm going to go to Edit. You know what? Let me actually get my sidebar. I'm going to put it right here after this one. So maybe if I go Edit, Insert, look at my frequency polygon. Yep, and then it'll go right there, right after it. Okay, so there we have SPSS Application 1. This is where it asks for the frequency polygon, but I just put it above. And that is number 1. Okay, SPSS Application 2, I'm going to have you do on your own. So you are going to want to just have your output minimized so that when you do application number 2, you're adding to it. And so you can come up here to these labels, and you can label this first one if you double click on it, you can then type SPSS Application number 1, and then it will stay there for you so that you could then, when you get your next data set or your next frequency distribution and statistics for your SPSS Application number 2 data, you can then label that SPSS Application number 2 so that you have a real clear delineation between all of these problems. So I'm going to have you do SPSS Application number 2 on your own, and you're going to be just replicating what you did in number 1, but with different data. And so when you enter the data, you will be able to go back into variable view and then label the name of the name the variable and label it. You could change the decimals to 2 because it looks like there are this data has 1 digit after the decimal in some cases, so maybe just change it to 1. Label the variable with a little code, name it, and then go to your data view section, and here you'll type in the data from the problem for SPSS Application number 2. You'll type in that data here. If you want to first clear this out or just leave it in, it's up to you how you want to go about it, but nonetheless you're going to do that. And then once you have all that data entered, you're going to run through getting your descriptive stats, making a histogram and a frequency polygon just like we did in number 1. But to help you, just as a quick review, here you have the questions of what this application is looking for: frequency of students scoring 5.5, percentage, and then again how many students, which is just another way of saying frequency. And you'll remember that we got those numbers right at the top of our output. Here you can get the frequency counts for each score and the percentage scoring. So you'll look there, but of course for this specific data set for number 2, which will appear beneath your frequency polygon for number 1, as long as you don't close out. And then, keep saving periodically. All right, and so then what you're going to do after you complete number 2 is you're going to do number 3, and for this you're going to need the mode, median, mean, variance, and standard deviation. And again, that's going to be on the output when you enter in the data that it's asking for. It's going to pop up in a box that looks like this, and you'll be able to answer these questions from the data that's in the box associated with these values. So it'll pop up looking like this on your output. You'll put it all in there. And then it's going to ask you to compare the results you obtain in SPSS to those you obtained by hand. Is there a difference? If there is a difference, why? If not, why? Are the results obtained in SPSS smaller, larger, or the same as those calculated by hand? So I wanted to explain to you now the variance, and then as kind of evidence that you made it this far in the video, you could just rewrite what I'm saying. But the variance and standard deviation are different when entered into SPS and hand calculated, because SPS uses n-1 in the denominator of the variance instead of just n when we calculate it by hand. So the results obtained by SPSS is larger because when calculating variance, SPSS is dividing by a smaller number. In this case, it will be 24, resulting in a larger answer. So the way that SPSS goes about calculating standard deviation and variance is basically using the computational method, and we use the deviation method. So the numbers are going to be slightly different, but for the most part they're going to be around the same values. Okay, so you'll need to go ahead and complete number 3, and then if you would like, you can do this extra SPSS application here for fun, for having a good time and just want to keep going. So anyways, once you enter in all of your answers, and first you'll have to submit your completed SPSS output with all of the applications for this assignment. So there were 3. You'll have to submit this output to Canvas, and then you'll need to all the information that you're putting on this sheet you'll have to enter into the lab assignment on Canvas for credit. So you'll need this sheet handy when you do that. And don't forget to save your output so that you can submit it. And that is all that I have for you for this lab.